The rain hammered against the windows that November night, each drop like a small fist demanding to be heard. Inside the two-story colonial home on Maple Street, the warmth of Thanksgiving dinner should have filled every corner. Instead, my daughter Rachel stood in the foyer, her face twisted with a rage I had never seen before, not even during her worst teenage years. "You are a parasite." Her voice cut through the chatter of dinner guests like a blade through silk. "Every single day you drain this household. You eat our food, you use our electricity, you breathe our air, and you give nothing back. Nothing." My suitcase landed on the porch with a crash that made the neighbors stop mid-conversation. Through the window, I could see their faces turned toward the commotion, forks suspended in midair, wine glasses frozen halfway to lips. Rachel had thrown my belongings out during Thanksgiving dinner. Not just any dinner, but the one where her new boyfriend's wealthy parents were visiting, the one she had been trying to impress for months. The brown leather suitcase my late husband bought me in 1989 lay sideways on the wet concrete, zipper split open, my clothes spilling out like secrets I could no longer keep. My winter coat followed, then my shoes, then the small wooden box containing letters from my granddaughter Sophie. Rachel stood framed in the doorway, backlit by the chandelier I had installed myself 20 years ago. Her mother-in-law-to-be, Patricia, stood behind her with a napkin pressed to her lips, eyes wide but not intervening. Her boyfriend Marcus hovered near the stairs, looking everywhere except at me. Sophie, my 9-year-old granddaughter, pressed her face against the banister upstairs, tears streaming down her cheeks, but she knew better than to speak. "This is my house." Rachel's declaration rang out clear and cold. "My house, my rules, my life. You have been nothing but dead weight since you moved in. You contribute $0. You do nothing but complain and make everything about yourself. I'm done. I'm finally done pretending you matter here." I stood in the doorway, feeling the cold November air creep around my ankles. I opened my mouth to speak, to explain, to defend, but Rachel held up one perfectly manicured hand. "Save it. I already bought your ticket. One way to Meadowbrook Senior Living. They have meals, they have nurses, they have everything you need. You leave tonight." She pressed a white envelope into my palm, the paper crisp and formal. Inside was a bus ticket departing at midnight and a brochure for a state-funded facility 3 hours away. The brochure showed smiling elderly people playing checkers, but I knew what those places really were. Warehouses for the forgotten. Waiting rooms for death. Sophie broke free from her spot on the stairs and ran down, her small feet thundering on the hardwood. "Grandma, please." She threw her arms around my waist. "Please do not go. I will be good. I will convince Mom." "Say." I bent down, my knees aching with emotion, and cupped her face in my hands. Her skin was soft, still baby soft, still innocent of the cruelties that shaped her mother. I kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "I will be all right, sweetheart. You take care of yourself. Be strong." Rachel grabbed Sophie by the shoulder and pulled her back. "Do not make this harder than it needs to be." She directed this at both of us, her tone sharp enough to draw blood. I gathered my coat from the porch, my hands shaking from cold and something deeper, something that felt like the final collapse of a dam I had been shoring up for years. The neighbors watched as I picked up my suitcase, its broken zipper making it difficult to carry with any dignity. I did not look back at the house I had bought with my own money, the house Rachel thought belonged to her. The walk to the bus station was longer than I remembered. My shoes, worn thin from years of use, let in the rain. Each step sent cold water shooting up between my toes. I passed the park where I used to push Sophie on the swings, the grocery store where I shopped every Tuesday with coupons cut carefully from the Sunday paper, the church where I had attended services alone for the past 4 years because Rachel said religion was for the weak-minded. The bus station smelled of diesel fuel and desperation. I sat on a metal bench bolted to the floor and opened the envelope Rachel had given me. Inside, along with the ticket, was a handwritten note on her expensive stationery. "Mother, this is for the best. You have become a burden I can no longer carry. Meadowbrook will take care of you. Do not contact me. Do not contact Sophie. We need to move forward without your negativity dragging us down." Consider this a gift. You are finally free from the responsibility of being a mother. Rachel. I folded the note carefully, creased it along the same lines she had, and tucked it back into the envelope. Then I pulled out my own envelope, the one I had been carrying in my coat pocket for 3 weeks, ever since I overheard Rachel on the phone with a real estate agent discussing selling the house. The house she thought was hers. The house she had been planning to sell without my knowledge. Inside my envelope was a single document. Deed. The original deed from 1994. The year I won $47,000 in the state lottery and used every penny of it to buy a home for me and my 12-year-old daughter. The deed that had my name on it, and only my name, written in blue ink that had not faded in 30 years. Smiled. Not a happy smile, not a sad smile, but the smile of someone who has just remembered they are not as powerless as they have been told. The bus would not leave for another hour. Had time. I had all the time in the world now. Because Rachel did not know what I knew. She did not know about the deed. She did not know about the lawyer I had visited last month. She did not know that her Thanksgiving dinner tantrum had just been recorded by 3 different neighbors on their phones. She did not know that her perfect life, built on lies and stolen property, was about to come crashing down. I settled back on the bench, pulled my coat tighter and waited. The rain outside turned to sleet, but inside the station, I felt warm for the first time in years. Because I had been silent for so long, playing the role of the useless old woman, the burden, the ghost in my own home. But silence is not the same as powerless. And memory, well, memory is the sharpest weapon of all. Tomorrow, Rachel would wake up in the house she thought she owned. She would pour her coffee in the kitchen she had renovated without asking me. She would sit at the table where she had humiliated me in front of her guests. And she would have no idea that the foundation she built her cruelty on was about to crack wide open. I closed my eyes and let the sounds of the bus station wash over me. Announcements crackling over old speakers. The hiss of air brakes. The shuffle of tired travelers. Somewhere in that noise I found peace. Because revenge does not always announce itself with thunder. Sometimes it arrives quietly, on a rainy November night, in the pocket of an old woman with a deed and a memory that refuses to fade. The story of how I ended up in that bus station begins years before Rachel threw me out. It begins in the cramped apartment on 4th Street where we lived after my husband died. James had been a shift supervisor at the textile mill, a good man who worked 60-hour weeks and still found time to read bedtime stories to Rachel. He died 3 weeks after her 7th birthday, massive heart attack in the break room at work. I was 32 years old, suddenly a widow with a 2nd grader and $1,800 in the bank. I took every job I could find. I cleaned houses in the morning, worked the register at the grocery store in the afternoon, and did bookkeeping for a small accounting firm at night. Rachel stayed with neighbors or locked herself in our apartment with strict instructions not to open the door for anyone. I worked 7 days a week for 5 years straight. I never bought new clothes. I never went to movies. I never did anything that cost money unless it directly benefited my daughter. Rachel was smart, gifted even. She tested into the advanced program at school. She won spelling bees and math competitions. Teachers told me she had potential, real potential, the kind that could take her anywhere. I pushed her. I demanded excellence. I checked her homework every night even when my eyes blurred from exhaustion. I made her read books above her grade level. I signed her up for every free program the community center offered. She hated me for it. I could see it in her eyes even then, the resentment building like sediment at the bottom of a river. She wanted to be like the other kids, carefree and careless. She wanted to watch television and play outside until dark. She wanted a mother who smiled more and demanded less. But I could not give her that. The world was not kind to poor women, and I was determined she would never be poor. When Rachel was 12, I won the lottery. Not the big jackpot, nothing that would make the news, but enough. $47,000 from a scratch-off ticket I bought with change I found in the laundromat. Told no one. Not my neighbors, not my family, not even Rachel. I took the money in a lump sum, paid the taxes, and started looking for a house. I found the Colonial on Maple Street. It needed work, but the bones were good. The owner was elderly and motivated, his children eager to sell quickly so they could split the proceeds. Paid cash, $42,000. I used the remaining money to fix the roof, update the electrical, and buy furniture from estate sales. When everything was done, I brought Rachel to see it. "This is ours," I told her as we stood on the front lawn. "Just ours. No landlords, no evictions, no more moving. This is home," she cried. 12 years old and crying on the front lawn because she finally had stability. I thought that moment would bind us forever. I thought she would remember what I had sacrificed, what I had built for us. Thought wrong. Rachel grew into a difficult teenager. She dated boys I did not approve of, stayed out past curfew, talked back with increasing venom. She accused me of being controlling, of ruining her social life, of being jealous of her youth. The fights escalated. By the time she was 16, we barely spoke except to argue. She fell in love with a boy named Derek. He was 19, worked part-time at an auto body shop, and had a motorcycle he could barely afford to insure. He was charming in the way dangerous things often are, smooth talking, quick with a compliment, always knowing exactly what vulnerable teenage girl wanted to hear. I forbade her from seeing him. I threatened to call the police since she was underage. I did everything I could to break them apart. She ran away on her 17th birthday. Left a note saying she was moving in with Derek, that I had driven her away with my constant criticism, that she would rather be homeless than spend another day in my prison. I called her every day for a month. She never answered. I drove to every place I thought she might be. No one would tell me anything. She came back 6 months later. Pregnant, bruised, and broken. She showed up at 3 in the morning, shivering on the porch in a tank top and jeans despite the freezing February weather. Her lip was split. Her left eye was swollen shut. She was 4 months along, belly just starting to show. I let her in without a word. I ran her a bath. I made her soup. I put her in her old bedroom and told her she was safe. She sobbed for 3 days straight. When she finally told me what happened, I wanted to kill him. Derek had been using drugs. He became violent when he was high. He blamed her for getting pregnant. He blamed her for everything. The night she left, he had pushed her down a flight of stairs. I begged her to press charges. She refused. She said it would make things worse, that he knew where we lived, that he had friends who would come after us. I did not push. I was just grateful to have her home. Sophie was born in September. A perfect baby girl with Rachel's dark hair and James's gentle eyes. Rachel held her and cried again, but this time they were different tears. These were tears of love so fierce they looked like pain. She promised Sophie everything. Promised she would be a good mother. Promised she would never let anyone hurt her. Promised she would give her a better life than she had. I thought we had turned a corner. I thought motherhood had softened Rachel, had reminded her of what family meant. But trauma does strange things to people. Twists them. It makes them see threats where none exist. It makes them build walls so high that love cannot climb over. Rachel became obsessed with stability, with control, with making sure Sophie never experienced the chaos she had lived through with Derek. She worked constantly, sometimes 2 jobs, saving every penny. She was terrified of losing the house, even though I assured her it was paid off, that we owned it free and clear. She did not believe me. She could not believe that anything good could last. When Sophie was 3, Rachel started making changes to the house. She repainted the living room without asking. She replaced the furniture. She renovated the kitchen, taking out a small loan to pay for granite counters and stainless steel appliances. She acted like it was her house, like I was just a guest who happened to live there. I let it happen. I told myself she was just trying to make a home for Sophie. I told myself it did not matter who paid for what as long as we were together. I told myself that love meant letting go of small things like control and credit. I was wrong about that too. Over the years, Rachel's gratitude turned to resentment. She started making comments about how I did not contribute financially. Never mind that the house was mine, that I had bought it with money she never knew I had. She started treating me like a burden, like an elderly relative who had overstayed their welcome. She gave me rules. I could not use the kitchen during her meal prep times. I could not have guests over without permission. I could not watch television in the living room when she wanted quiet. Slowly I was erased. My belongings were moved to the smallest bedroom. My photos were taken down from the walls. My opinions were dismissed. My presence was tolerated at best, resented at worst. I became invisible in the house I owned. Sophie was the only light. She loved me fiercely, the way children love before the world teaches them to ration their affection. She climbed into my bed at night when Rachel was working late. She asked me to tell her stories about her grandfather. She drew me pictures and taped them to my walls. She told me I was her favorite person in the whole world. Rachel hated that. She accused me of trying to steal Sophie's love, of undermining her authority, of poisoning her daughter against her. The accusations were absurd, but they stuck. Rachel started limiting my time with Sophie. She enrolled her in after-school programs so she would not come home to me. She signed her up for weekend activities. She did everything she could to create distance between us. I endured it all in silence. I told myself it would get better. I told myself Rachel would eventually remember who had saved her, who had given her a home, who had raised her granddaughter while she worked herself to exhaustion. I told myself patience was a virtue. But patience, I learned, can also be a trap. Can keep you silent when you should speak. Can keep you still when you should move. Can keep you compliant when you should fight. The breaking point came when I overheard Rachel on the phone with a real estate agent. She was discussing selling the house, listing prices in our neighborhood, how quickly properties were moving. She talked about using the money to move somewhere better, somewhere with good schools and safe streets, somewhere far from the old neighborhood and old memories. She was planning to sell my house. The house I had bought with lottery money she never knew existed. The house I had put in my name and only my name. The house she had been pretending was hers for so long that she had started to believe it. I said nothing. I went to my room, pulled out the metal lockbox I kept under my bed, and removed the deed. I read it 3 times, making sure the words had not changed. Victoria and Winters. Soloner. Purchased October 15, 1994. Everything was still there. Everything was still true. The next day, I took the bus downtown to the office of Martin Holloway, the lawyer who had handled the original sale. He was older now, half retired but still sharp. He remembered me. Remembered the young widow who paid cash for a house and cried when she signed the papers. We talked for 2 hours. I told him everything. How Rachel had moved in temporarily and never left. How she had renovated without permission. How she had been paying property taxes and claiming the house as her primary residence on legal documents. How she was now trying to sell it out from under me. Martin leaned back in his chair and shook his head. This is elder abuse. Financial exploitation. You could press charges. I do not want charges. I just want my house back. He nodded slowly. Then we need to make sure everything is airtight. We need to re-establish your ownership legally and publicly. We need to make sure there is no question, no ambiguity, no way for her to claim ignorance or good faith mistakes. We spent the next 3 weeks preparing. Martin filed a quiet title action, a legal process that confirmed my ownership and cleared any clouds on the title. He prepared a cease and desist letter demanding Rachel stop claiming ownership. He drafted eviction papers just in case. He made copies of everything, backed up everything, prepared for every possible challenge. And then Rachel threw me out on Thanksgiving. In front of her boyfriend's parents. In front of the neighbors. In front of Sophie. She handed me a bus ticket and told me to disappear. She thought I was powerless. She thought I was defeated. She thought wrong. I sat in that bus station with the deed in my pocket and Martin's number in my phone. At 11:45, 15 minutes before my bus was supposed to depart, I called him. It was late, but he answered on the second ring. Martin, I said. It is time. What happened? She threw me out. In front of witnesses. I need you to file everything tomorrow morning. He was quiet for a moment. Are you sure? Once we start this, there is no going back. I'm sure. All right. I will have everything filed by noon. Where will you be? I looked at the departure board. The bus to Meadowbrook Senior Living was boarding. But there was another bus, one headed to my sister's house 2 states away. Margaret had been asking me to visit for years. I had always said no, not wanting to leave Sophie. But Sophie would be fine. She was strong. She would understand eventually. I will be at my sister's. I will call you when I get there. Victoria, he said, and there was something like pride in his voice. You are doing the right thing. No. I have been doing the right thing her whole life. It is about time someone noticed. Hung up. I walked to the ticket counter and exchanged my ticket. The woman behind the counter looked at me with tired eyes and asked if I was sure. I smiled at her, a real smile this time, and told her I had never been more certain of anything in my life. The bus to Margaret's house left at 12:30. I had time to grab a coffee and a stale sandwich from the vending machine. I ate slowly, tasting every bite because for the first time in years, I was eating food I had chosen, paid for with money Rachel had given me for the senior home but that I was now using for freedom. 12:15 I boarded the bus. I found a seat near the back by the window and watched the rain streak across the glass. The bus pulled out of the station at exactly 12:30. As we drove past Maple Street, I looked out the window at the house. The lights were still on. Through the windows I could see shadows moving. Rachel was probably cleaning up from dinner, probably laughing with Marcus's parents, probably celebrating her liberation from the burden of her aging mother. She had no idea what was coming. No idea that by noon tomorrow, she would receive a legal notice informing her that the house she thought she owned actually belonged to me. No idea that she would be given 30 days to vacate. No idea that every renovation she had made, every change she had implemented, every claim of ownership she had filed, was about to blow up in her face. I closed my eyes and let the motion of the bus rock me. For the first time in years I slept deeply, dreamlessly, peacefully. Because I had stopped being a victim. I had stopped accepting crumbs from the table I set. I had stopped letting my daughter rewrite history to cast herself as the hero and me as the villain. I had remembered who I was. Victoria Ann Winters. Lottery winner. Homeowner. Survivor. And I was done being silent. Margaret picked me up from the station at 6 in the morning. She was older than me by 4 years, grayer, rounder, but with the same sharp eyes our mother had. She took one look at me and pulled me into a hug that smelled like lavender and baking bread. What did she do? Margaret asked. Everything I knew she would. But it does not matter anymore. We drove to her small house on the edge of town. It was nothing fancy, a 1-story ranch with faded siding and a yard full of garden gnomes, but it was warm and welcoming in a way my own house had not been for years. She made me breakfast. Real breakfast with eggs and bacon and toast with butter. We sat at her kitchen table and I told her everything. Margaret listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You should have called me sooner. No. But I kept hoping it would get better. It never gets better with people like that. They just take and take until there is nothing left. You did the right thing. He nodded. I knew I had. But knowing and feeling are different things. Part of me still ached for my daughter, for the little girl who used to hold my hand crossing the street, who used to make me dandelion bouquets, who used to tell me I was the best mommy in the world. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman I did not recognize, a woman who valued appearances over truth, money over love, control over compassion. Martin called at noon exactly. The papers are filed. She should receive notice by end of business today. How long do I have to wait? 30 days unless she contests. If she contests, we go to court and it gets messy. But we have everything we need. The deed, the payment records, the witness statements from neighbors about her claims of ownership. She does not have a case. What about Sophie? That gets complicated. If Rachel is evicted, she will need to find new housing. The court will not separate a mother from her child unless there is abuse or neglect. But you could file for grandparent visitation rights. Given the circumstances, you would likely be granted regular access. I thought about Sophie's face pressed against the banister, tears streaming down her cheeks. I thought about all the nights she crawled into bed with me seeking comfort. I thought about how Rachel had been systematically cutting me out of her life. File for visitation. I want it official. I want it court-ordered. I want Rachel to know she cannot erase me. Consider it done. We hung up. Margaret made me tea and we sat on her back porch watching birds fight over the feeder. It was peaceful in a way I had forgotten existed. No tension. No walking on eggshells. No measuring every word before speaking. Just quiet. Just calm. Just freedom. Rachel called that evening. My phone rang at 7:15 and her name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. What the hell is this? Her voice was shrill, panicked. What did you do? I enforced my property rights. Your property. This is my house. I have lived here for years. I have paid the taxes. I have made the mortgage payments. There is no mortgage, Rachel. I bought the house with cash in 1994. My name is on the deed. My name only. That is impossible. You never had that kind of money. I won the lottery. $47,000. I used it to buy us a home. A home you are now trying to sell without my permission. Silence. I could hear her breathing, could almost see her mind racing, trying to find an angle, a loophole, a way to spin this in her favor. You are lying. You are making this up to punish me. I have the deed. I have the original purchase documents. I have 30 years of property tax records in my name. What do you have, Rachel? What proof do you have that you own anything? More silence. Then softer, almost pleading. Mom, please. Have Sophie. Have a life here. You cannot just kick us out. You threw me out. On Thanksgiving. In front of everyone. You called me a parasite. You bought me a one-way ticket to a nursing home and told me never to contact you again. I was angry. I did not mean it. You meant every word. And now you get to live with the consequences. You have 30 days. Hung up. My hands were shaking. Margaret appeared with a blanket and wrapped it around my shoulders. She did not ask if I was okay. She knew I was not. But I was something better than okay. I was right. I was justified. I was finally standing up for myself. The next day Rachel called 6 more times. I did not answer. She left voicemails that progressed from angry to desperate to manipulative. She threatened to sue me. She promised to change. She claimed I was traumatizing Sophie. She tried every tactic she had ever used to control me. None of them worked. I deleted every message without listening to the end. On day 3, Sophie called. Her voice was small and scared. Grandma, why did you leave? Why is Mom crying? When are you coming home? My heart broke. I miss you so much, sweetheart. But I cannot come back right now. Your mom and I need to work some things out. She said you are trying to take our house. The house belongs to me, Sophie. I bought it a long time ago. Your mom did not know that, and now she is upset. But everything will be okay. Will I still see you? Promise. I'm making sure of it. She sniffled. I love you, Grandma. I love you too. More than you know. After she hung up, I cried for the first time since leaving. Not because I regretted my decision, but because loving someone who is being poisoned against you is a special kind of torture. Sophie was innocent in all of this. She did not deserve to be caught in the middle. But Rachel had put her there, not me. Rachel had made this necessary. The court date was set for 3 weeks out. Martin was confident we would win, but he warned me Rachel would likely bring a lawyer and make a scene. She will claim she believed the house was hers. She will say you gave her permission to make changes. She will paint herself as the victim. You need to be ready for that. I've been ready my whole life. We prepared meticulously. Martin gathered every document, every record, every piece of evidence that proved my ownership. He interviewed neighbors who had heard Rachel claim the house was hers. He pulled permits she had filed for renovations, permits where she listed herself as the property owner. He built a case so solid that even Rachel's best lawyer would not be able to crack it. The day before court, Margaret helped me pick out an outfit. Something professional but not flashy. We settled on a navy blue dress with a simple pearl necklace, the same pearls James had given me on our 5th anniversary. I wanted to look like what I was. A respectable woman defending her property. We arrived at the courthouse early. Martin met us at the entrance, briefcase in hand, confidence in his eyes. We are going to win this. Just stay calm, tell the truth, and do not let her bait you. Rachel arrived 10 minutes before the hearing was set to start. She was wearing an expensive suit I had never seen before, probably bought with money she should have been saving. She had a lawyer with her, a young man with a slick haircut and a cheaper suit. They conferred in whispers near the door, shooting glances at me. Sophie was not there. Rachel had left her with a babysitter, probably to avoid the spectacle, probably to avoid having her daughter see her mother exposed as a liar. The judge was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and reading glasses that hung on a chain. She reviewed the file for several minutes before speaking. This is a quiet title action filed by Victoria Winters to confirm ownership of the property at 412 Maple Street. Miss Winters, you claim you are the sole owner of this property. Is that correct? Understood. Yes, Your Honor. And Miss Rachel Cooper, you have been living at this property for approximately 7 years. Is that correct? Rachel stood. Yes, Your Honor. But I believed it was my house. My mother never told me otherwise. I have been maintaining it, paying taxes, making improvements. I had every reason to believe I owned it. The judge looked at her over her glasses. Do you have a deed in your name? No, but my mother is elderly. She has memory issues. I have been managing her affairs. Martin stood. Your Honor, Miss Winters is 70 years old and in full possession of her faculties. She holds a deed dated October 15, 1994, clearly showing her as sole owner. She has paid property taxes continuously in her own name. There is no evidence of any memory issues, and in fact, Miss Cooper never had permission to claim ownership. The judge reviewed the deed. Miss Cooper, did you ever see this deed before today? Rachel hesitated. No, but I assumed the house was part of my father's estate. Your father died in 1987. This deed is dated 1994, 7 years later. And it shows your mother purchased the property with her own funds, not through inheritance. Did you ever ask your mother about ownership? I did not think I needed to. She invited me to move in. She let me renovate. She never said anything about it being her house. The judge looked at me. Miss Winters, did you tell your daughter she could claim ownership? I stood again. No, Your Honor. I allowed her to live with me rent-free after she fell on hard times. I allowed her to make changes to make the space comfortable for her and my granddaughter. But I never transferred ownership. I never gave her permission to represent herself as the owner. When I discovered she was planning to sell the house without my knowledge, I sought legal counsel. And the incident that precipitated this action, she evicted me. On Thanksgiving, in front of guests, she threw my belongings onto the porch and gave me a bus ticket to a nursing home. She told me I was a burden and that the house would be better without me. The judge turned back to Rachel. Is this true? Rachel's lawyer whispered something to her. She nodded reluctantly. I was frustrated, Your Honor. My mother and I had been having difficulties. I thought it would be better for both of us if she had professional care. So you threw her out of her own house. I did not know it was her house. The judge removed her glasses. Miss Cooper, ignorance is not a defense when the evidence is this clear. Your mother has a deed in her name. She has 30 years of tax records. She has never transferred title. You have been living in her property rent-free, making unauthorized claims of ownership, and when confronted, you physically evicted her. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. Furthermore, you are ordered to pay court costs and attorney fees. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down. Rachel turned white. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder, but she shrugged it off. She looked at me across the courtroom, and for just a moment, I saw the little girl she used to be. The one who needed me, who loved me, who thought I hung the moon. Then her face hardened and she looked away. Outside the courthouse, Martin shook my hand. Congratulations. The house is officially, legally, publicly yours. You cannot touch it. Thank you. For everything. What will you do now? I thought about the empty house on Maple Street. The house I had bought with hope and sacrifice. The house I had filled with love even when that love was not returned. The house that had become a prison but could be something else again. I am going to turn it into something good. Something that matters. Margaret drove me back to her house that night, but I could not sleep. I kept thinking about all the years I had stayed silent, all the times I had accepted mistreatment because I thought that was what mothers did. I thought about other women like me, women whose children had turned on them, women who had been erased in their own homes, women who had been cast aside when they were no longer useful. By morning I had a plan. Called Martin at 8. I want to set up a non-profit. A home for elderly women who have been displaced by their families. He was quiet for a moment. That is ambitious. Have a house. I have my social security. I have a daughter who is about to be evicted and cannot say anything about what I do with my property. I want to use it to help women who have nowhere else to go. I will draw up the paperwork. Took 3 months to get everything organized. Martin helped me establish the Maple Street Home for Mothers, a non-profit dedicated to providing temporary housing for elderly women experiencing family estrangement or abuse. We set up a small board of directors, filed for tax-exempt status, and began making renovations to turn the house into a proper group home. Rachel's 30 days came and went. She fought the eviction, hired a better lawyer, filed appeals. But the law was clear and her case was weak. By the end of the 3rd month, the sheriff was at the door with an eviction notice. I was not there. Could not watch. But Margaret went in my place and took photos. Photos of Rachel crying on the porch, boxes stacked around her, Marcus's car packed full of their belongings. Photos of Sophie holding her stuffed rabbit, confused and sad but not crying. She was stronger than her mother. She would survive this. They moved into a small apartment across town. Rachel got a job as a receptionist. Marcus stayed with her, which surprised me. Maybe he really did love her. Maybe he saw something in her I could no longer see. Or maybe he was just as broken as she was. I filed for visitation rights. Rachel contested, but the court granted me supervised visits every other weekend. The first visit was awkward. Sophie was quiet, withdrawn, clearly coached by her mother about what to say and not say. But by the 3rd visit she started to relax. By the 5th visit she was laughing again. By the 10th, she asked if she could spend the night sometime. The Maple Street home opened 6 months after the eviction. Our first resident was Dorothy, a 72-year-old woman whose son had drained her bank account and left her homeless. She arrived with 1 grocery bag of clothes and a photo album she had managed to hide from him. She cried when I showed her the bedroom we had prepared. Clean sheets, warm blankets, a window that looked out onto the garden. Is this really for me? She asked. For as long as you need it. Our second resident was Patricia, 68, kicked out by her daughter after a fight about money. Our third was Helen, 75, whose family put her in a nursing home and sold her house without her consent. She escaped, literally walked out the front door in her nightgown and slippers, and a social worker brought her to us. Within a year, we had 8 women living in the house. The dining room became a communal space where we ate meals together. The living room became a reading room with donated books and comfortable chairs. The garage became a craft workshop where the women made quilts, pottery, paintings. We sold their work at local markets and used the money to fund the house. Sophie visited every other weekend. She loved the women. She helped Dorothy organize her photo albums. She taught Patricia how to use a smartphone. She read books to Helen, who had macular degeneration and could no longer see well enough to read herself. The women adored her. They called her our little sunshine. They baked her cookies and knitted her scarves and told her stories about their own grandchildren, the ones who no longer visited, the ones who had forgotten them. Rachel never visited the house. She drove by sometimes, slowing down to look at the women sitting on the porch, but she never stopped. I wondered what she thought when she saw what I had built. Did she feel shame? Did she feel regret? Did she feel anything at all? I would never know. She refused to speak to me beyond the minimum required for Sophie's visitation exchanges. One afternoon, about 18 months after the house opened, I was in the garden with Helen when a car pulled up. A woman in her 50s got out, looked around nervously, then approached the gate. "Is this the Maple Street home?" "It is. Can I help you?" She twisted her hands together. "My name is Carolyn. I saw an article about this place in the newspaper. About how you help women who have been abandoned by their families." "We do. I was wondering if you had room for one more." I looked at her worn jacket, her scuffed shoes, the bruise fading on her jaw. I thought about the empty bedroom upstairs, the one we had been keeping ready for exactly this moment. "Come inside. Me make you some tea." Carolyn had been living in her car for 3 weeks after her daughter changed the locks and accused her of stealing money that Carolyn had actually loaned her. She had proof, bank statements and signed loan documents, but her daughter had destroyed them and filed a police report claiming Carolyn was mentally unstable. By the time Carolyn proved her innocence, she had already lost her apartment and her job. She moved in that evening. Within a week, she was helping in the kitchen. Within a month, she had taken over the bookkeeping. Within 6 months, she became our unofficial house manager, the one who made sure bills were paid and supplies were ordered and doctor appointments were scheduled. She found purpose again. They all did. The local news ran a story about us. A reporter came out, interviewed the women, filmed the house. The segment aired during the evening news. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in. Volunteers called asking how they could help. Other women called asking if they could move in. We had to start a waiting list. Rachel saw the segment. "I know because Sophie told me. She said Mom watched it 3 times. She said Mom cried." "What did she say?" Asked gently. Sophie looked down at her hands. "She said she did not know you could do something like that. She said she did not know you were strong enough." I pulled Sophie close. "Your mother has never known who I really am. But maybe someday she will." Years passed. The Maple Street home became an institution in our community. We expanded, bought the house next door when it went up for sale, doubled our capacity. We started support groups for women dealing with family estrangement. We offered legal clinics to help women navigate property disputes and financial abuse cases. We became a model that other communities started to replicate. Sophie grew. At 13, she asked if she could volunteer at the house officially. At 15, she wrote her college application essay about the summer she spent teaching computer skills to elderly women. At 17, she announced she wanted to study social work and someday run a home just like ours. Rachel and I never reconciled. She sent a card on my 75th birthday, unsigned with just 3 words written inside. "I'm sorry." I kept it in my desk drawer, but I did not respond. Some wounds are too deep to heal with 3 words. Some betrayals cannot be undone with a greeting card. But I forgave her. Not for her sake but for mine. I forgave her because carrying hate is exhausting and I needed my strength for better things. I forgave her because Sophie deserved a grandmother who was not consumed by bitterness. I forgave her because forgiveness is not about forgetting. It is about refusing to let the past control your future. On my 77th birthday, Sophie brought me breakfast in bed. Pancakes with strawberries, just the way I used to make them for her when she was little. She sat on the edge of my bed and handed me an envelope. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside was a letter of acceptance to the state university. Full scholarship, major in social work. I stared at it, tears blurring the words. "You did this," Sophie said softly. "You showed me what strength looks like. You showed me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is protect yourself. You showed me that women do not have to accept mistreatment just because it comes from family." I pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling the weight of her head on my shoulder. "You are going to change the world, sweetheart." "No, Grandma. You already did. I am just going to keep it going." That summer, we held a fundraiser for the house. A garden party with donated food and live music and speeches from the women whose lives had been transformed. Dorothy talked about finding purpose again after her son's betrayal. Patricia talked about learning to trust again. Helen talked about the family she had found when her blood family abandoned her. Carolyn talked about the power of second chances. I was supposed to give the closing speech, but when I stood at the microphone, the words caught in my throat. I looked out at the crowd. At the women who had found refuge in my home. At the volunteers who had given their time. At the donors who had given their money. At Sophie standing in the front row, beaming with pride. And in the very back, half hidden behind a tree, I saw Rachel. She was watching, tears streaming down her face, making no move to wipe them away. Eyes met. For a moment I thought she might leave. Instead she stayed. She stayed and listened as I told the story of a young widow who won the lottery and bought a house. Who raised a difficult daughter and made mistakes but never stopped trying. Who was thrown out of her own home but refused to be erased. Who turned her pain into purpose and her house into a haven. When I finished, the crowd applauded. Rachel did not. She just stood there, crying silently, and then she turned and walked away. I watched her go and felt something inside me release. Some final piece of grief I had been carrying for too long. Sophie came up to me afterward. Did you see her? I did. Are you okay? I am better than okay. I'm free. That night, after everyone had gone home and the women were settled in their rooms, I sat on the porch swing and looked up at the stars. The same stars I used to watch with James, back when we were young and foolish and thought love could conquer anything. The same stars I watched alone after he died, wondering how I would survive. The same stars I watched with baby Rachel in my arms, promising her a better life. The same stars I watched the night she threw me out, feeling like I had failed at everything that mattered. But I had not failed. I had stumbled, fallen, been knocked down and counted out. But I had gotten back up. I had remembered who I was and what I was capable of. I had taken the thing meant to destroy me and turned it into something beautiful. The front door opened and Dorothy shuffled out in her bathrobe, mug of tea in hand. Mind if I join you? Please. She settled into the rocking chair beside me and we sat in comfortable silence for a while. Finally she spoke. My son called today. Oh. He wanted money. He always wants money. But this time I said no. Good for you. He said I was being selfish. That family is supposed to help each other. I told him he was right, and when he was ready to be family instead of a leech, I would be here. Then I hung up, smiled. How did it feel? Like taking off shoes that were 2 sizes too small. Painful at first, then just relief. We rocked in silence, 2 old women who had learned the same hard lesson. That love without respect is not love at all. That family is not defined by blood but by behavior. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to accept unacceptable treatment. Dorothy, I said. Do you have any regrets? She thought for a long moment. Just one. I wish I had done this sooner. I wasted so many years trying to earn love from someone incapable of giving it. Years I could have spent being happy. He nodded. Me too. But we are happy now. That is what matters. She was right. I was happy. Not the giddy, naive happiness of youth, but the deep, settled happiness of someone who has survived fire and learned to warm themselves by the flames. I had lost my daughter, but I had gained 8 daughters. I had lost my home, but I had built a sanctuary. I had lost my illusions, but I had found my truth. The years that followed were the best of my life. The Maple Street home thrived. We helped dozens of women rebuild their lives. Some stayed for months, others for years. Some reconciled with their families. Others built new families with us. Each one left stronger than she arrived, carrying with her the knowledge that she was not alone, that her suffering mattered, that she deserved dignity and respect regardless of her age. Sophie graduated with honors. She got a job at a non-profit serving homeless veterans. She met a kind man who treated her well, who respected her work and her passion and her dedication to helping others. They got married in the garden of the Maple Street home, surrounded by the women who had become her extended family. Rachel did not attend. Sophie had invited her, but she declined, sending a gift card and another unsigned card with the same 3 words. I'm sorry. It was enough for Sophie to move forward, but not enough for reconciliation. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. But Sophie was at peace with it. She had a grandmother who loved her fiercely. She had a purpose that fulfilled her. She had a partner who supported her. She did not need a mother who could not be present. On my 80th birthday, the city honored me with a Community Service Award. The mayor gave a speech about the impact of the Maple Street home, about the lives saved and families healed and model created. They presented me with a plaque and a key to the city. Sophie cried. The women from the house stood and applauded for a full 5 minutes. And in the audience, in the very last row, Rachel sat alone. She had come. After all these years of silence, she had come. When the ceremony ended, she approached slowly, uncertainly. She looked older than her 50-some years, worn down by choices and consequences. Her voice cracked on the word. Can we talk? I looked at her. At the daughter I had raised and lost. At the woman who had thrown me out and stolen from me and humiliated me. At the stranger wearing my daughter's face. Whoa. She flinched like I had struck her. Please. I need to explain. I need you to understand. I understand perfectly. You thought I was weak. You thought I was stupid. You thought you could take what was mine and I would be too broken to fight back. You were wrong. I was angry. I was scared. I was trying to survive. By crushing me. That was your survival strategy. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I have known it for years. But I did not know how to fix it. I did not know how to apologize for something so huge. So you did nothing. You sent cards with 3 words and thought that was enough. What do you want from me? She was nearly shouting now, drawing stares. What can I possibly do to make this right? I stepped closer, lowered my voice. You can live with it. You can live with the knowledge that you destroyed our relationship over property and pride. You can live with the fact that your daughter knows what you did and chose me anyway. You can live with watching from the sidelines while I build something meaningful with the ruins you left behind. That is what you can do. Hate you. The words came out choked, desperate. No, you do not. You hate yourself. And you should. But that is not my problem anymore. I turned and walked away. Sophie was waiting by the car. She had heard everything. She took my arm and guided me to the passenger seat. Are you okay, Grandma? I am perfect. And I was. Because I had spent my entire life trying to be enough for Rachel. Enough love, enough sacrifice, enough patience, enough forgiveness. But enough is a moving target when you are dealing with someone who refuses to see your worth. So I stopped trying to be enough for her and started being enough for myself. The Maple Street home continues to this day. I am 83 now, too old to run it myself, but Sophie took over as director and she is brilliant. She expanded the programs, added mental health services, partnered with legal aid organizations to help women reclaim stolen property and assets. The house I bought with lottery money has helped over 200 women reclaim their lives. Rachel still lives across town. I see her sometimes from a distance at the grocery store or the park. We do not speak. We do not acknowledge each other. We are strangers bound only by DNA and history. Sophie sees her occasionally, duty visits for holidays, phone calls on birthdays. But their relationship is formal, distant. Rachel lost more than a house when she threw me out that Thanksgiving night. She lost her daughter's respect. And unlike property, respect cannot be reclaimed through legal action. I am at peace with how things turned out. I spent too many years of my life being small, being quiet, being convenient. I spent too many years believing that being a good mother meant accepting mistreatment from the child I raised. But I learned something in that bus station on that cold November night. I learned that you do not have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. I learned that self-respect is not selfish. I learned that memory is power and silence is a choice. The deed to the house hangs framed in the entry hall of the Maple Street home. Not as a trophy but as a reminder. A reminder that documents matter. That ownership matters. That women should never sign away their power, their property, or their peace. Every woman who enters sees it. Every woman who leaves remembers it. Last week, a new woman arrived. Her name was Grace, 76 years old, evicted by her son who wanted to sell her home and keep the money. She was exhausted, heartbroken, convinced she had nowhere to go. I made her tea and showed her the deed in the hallway. This house was almost taken from me by my own daughter. But I had this. I had proof that I mattered, that I owned something, that I could not be erased. Now it is a home for women like you. Women who were told they do not matter. Women who were erased in their own stories. You matter, Grace. And you are not alone. She cried then. Deep, shaking sobs that seemed to come from her bones. When she finally stopped, she looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. How did you do it? How did you survive losing your daughter? I did not lose her. She lost me. There is a difference. She chose pride over love. She chose lies over truth. She chose cruelty over compassion. Those were her choices, not mine. I only chose to survive them. Will she ever come back? I do not know. But I am not waiting to find out. I built a life without her. A good life. A meaningful life. Whether she realizes what she lost or not, I refuse to spend whatever time I have left mourning what could have been. Grace moved into the blue room upstairs. Within a week, she was laughing again. Within a month, she was teaching crochet classes to the other women. Within 6 months, she reconnected with a childhood friend and moved into an apartment nearby. But she still comes back every Tuesday for tea and craft circle. Because the Maple Street home is not just a house. It is a family. The family we chose when the family we were born into chose cruelty. On quiet evenings, I sit on the porch swing and watch the women come and go. I watch them arrive broken and leave whole. I watch them rediscover their worth. I watch them remember that age does not diminish value, that being discarded does not make you disposable, that losing everything can sometimes mean finding yourself. And sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet and the stars are bright, I think about that November night when my suitcase hit the porch and my daughter called me a parasite. I think about how small I felt, how powerless, how defeated. I think about the bus ticket in my hand and the deed in my pocket and the choice I made to fight instead of fade. And I smile. Because that night was not the end of my story. It was the beginning. The beginning of the Maple Street home. The beginning of my real legacy. The beginning of the moment I stopped being the victim in someone else's narrative and became the author of my own. My daughter tried to erase me. Instead, she freed me. And in that freedom, I built something she will never understand. A place where forgotten mothers are remembered. Where erased women are restored. Where silence transforms into power and memory becomes justice. The deed still hangs in the hallway. My name still clear and bold across the top. Victoria Ann Winters. Soul owner. Survivor. Architect of second chances. I look at it every single day and remember. Remember who I am. Remember what I built. Remember that some stories do not end when someone tries to write you out. Sometimes they are just beginning. Rachel will die someday without ever understanding what she destroyed. But I will die knowing what I created. And between destruction and creation, I know which legacy matters more. Mine will live on in every woman who walks through these doors. In every second chance granted. In every memory preserved. In every mother who refused to be forgotten. That is my revenge. Not cruelty but creation. Not silence but story. Not erasure but legacy. My daughter threw me away like trash on a Thanksgiving night. But trash, when planted in good soil, can bloom into something extraordinary. And this house, this family, this movement of mothers who refuse to fade, that is my garden. That is my truth. That is my power. And it will outlast us all.